longer be reimbursed. I'll come to that later. Currently in the Netherlands, there are about 6,700 patients, and the number of dispenses in the year of 2021 was 42,000. And it has been decreasing since 2017. Obviously, because it is no longer reimbursed, but another interesting data point that we got from the research that we did there is that the number of dispenses has been decreasing due to the lack of reimbursement, but also because patients got a larger quantity of product with each dispense. So whereas one patient used to count for 12 dispenses in a year, if the patient would get like one dispense every month, now this patient gets like 6 dispenses each year because he can use the product for a longer period. Our data shows that a patient uses about 0.7 grams per day, and the price in the Netherlands is 5.5 euros per gram. If you compare it to the price that a patient could get in the coffee shop, is 11 euros and 80 cents. So now I want to talk to you briefly about the way we see medicinal cannabis. And for us, the key word is standardization. What does that mean? Well, first of all, standardization means that our genetics are 100% genetically identical to each other. So that means every single plant is genetically identical. But that's not everything, because I can give 5 plants to 5 individuals here in the room and ask you to grow these plants, and in 5 weeks or 6 weeks we come back here, and I can guarantee you we've all different results. So even if the genetics are identical, you will not have identical specifications in terms of cannabinoids. Because you also need controlled growing conditions. Temperature, you need to be able to control the temperature of the plant. Light, as Thomas was already telling in his presentation earlier. Nutrition, water, the duration of your production cycle, and the rooms in which you grow the plants in. This is the standardization that we see at Bedrocan as crucial for getting the quality of the plants that we promised to not only the OMC, but also to the patient. And this means that from one seed, one single seed that we started growing in 2003, we've grown millions of plants. For each batch that we cultivate, each single batch, we use just the same plant that we started using in 2003. We don't use seeds anymore. We only use clones of plants for additional production cycles. And that's when you get this. Identical plants, millions and millions of identical plants. But not only in the looks and the appearance of the plant, which I'll explain later when I have some very interesting graphs to show to you, but the same conditions also apply to the drying, to the trimming, and to our hygiene standards. This is the level of professionalism we take in our product, in our company, not only because we oblige ourselves in the contract with the OMC, but because we believe that if you have this approach, that's what a pharmaceutical company needs to do. That is when you get the best quality for the product. That's when you get a standardized product. That's when you get the cannabis floss that we produce. We also produce granulate nowadays, which is a more, it's a smaller version of the plant. We don't produce oil, not yet, I would say. There is medicinal cannabis oil available in the Netherlands that is based on our raw material, but we don't produce it ourselves. So what does quality control mean? Because once we have completed a production batch, and we have gone through the process of drying and trimming and whatsoever, then at some point the Office of Medicinal Cannabis comes in, they do the expedition, and they want to see if we produce what we were set to produce. And they do this via it's called a quartering procedure. And you see that procedure displayed here. Basically, they take a couple of grams of the cannabis that we produced, they put it on a table, which is sterilized, of course, and they divide it into 4 quarters. And those 4 quarters are being controlled individually for heavy metals, the absence thereof, of course, for cannabinoids, for the cannabinoid content in the plant, the absence of pesticides, and the absence of microbiology. And I want you to picture this, this procedure really good, because this is actually the way how we defined our logo. Our logo displays the importance that we put into quality of our production process. So our products. Currently we have 5 varieties or 5 cannabis strains. Probably the most familiar one is the Bedrocan strain that we've been using since 2003. We have the Bedrocan strain, we have the Bediol, the Bedica, and the Bedrolite. And what's interesting in this table is that you see that Bedrocan and Bedica have the same amount of THC and CBD. Then you would say, are those plants identical? No, they're not. First of all, because the Bedrocan is a sativa variety and the Bedica is an indica. We were asked by the OMC to grow an indica variety. Okay, we said we can do that. But the real difference of these products is not in the THC and CBD content, it's in the terpenes. And this is an interesting picture that I want to show to you. This is, if you zoom in on a cannabis plant, this is what you see. But actually what is remarkable about this picture is that if you zoom in even further, you can see these kind of things, these kind of particles, these mushrooms. They're called trichomes. And these trichomes contain the most cannabinoid substances in, or basically outside the cannabis plant. This is where you find your amounts of THC and CBD and your terpenes. So what does standardization mean if you have your quality control? It means that your THC and CBD content is stable. And we've demonstrated that over, well, hundreds of batches already. But I just want to show you how we have done that over 10 batches of Bediol. You can see the bars on the top and the bottom, the maximum and the minimum. Those are the maximum and minimum amounts of THC and CBD that each batch of Bediol need to have. As you can see, all of our plants and all of our yields, basically, all of our batches are well within those lines. But if you compare the bars individually, you can see that they're also relatively stable from one batch to another. And that is what you can achieve with standardization. The black bars are the specifications or the requirements that are given by the OMC and by the monography, the European monography. But what is more important is that your batches are consistent after each other. Because in the end, a patient needs to be able to rely on the product that he or she is using. And I can guarantee that based on the data that we have, the batches that we started growing in 2003 are genetically identical to the batches that we're growing today and the batches that we will grow next year. And not only because the stability of the THC and CBD content, also because we have a stable terpene content. And here you just see 5 batches, again, of Bediol, and you see like a graph. Internally, we like to refer to this as a fingerprint. But the fingerprint of these 5 batches is identical. And I can ask for more data, and you will see the same graph over and over and over and over again. That is what standardization means for us. That is when you get a product that is reliable to use because you know what you're getting each and every time. In fact, if we produce a batch and it's outside of the specifications, we do not get paid by our government. We have to destroy the batch. That's how the government and how we put value to quality and to standardization. If you look at the jars that you can get in the pharmacy, you don't see our name anywhere. Well, you see the name of the variety, of course, but you don't see the name or the logo of the company. That's because we do not sell the product ourselves. We cultivate for the Office of Medicinal Cannabis. And I was talking about the oil. We have the oil available as well. You can see on the bottle, it's a Transvaal pharmacy in The Hague. As I was discussing with Ada and Clara over lunch, there are a lot of patients outside of the Netherlands that fly to the Netherlands just to get this cannabis oil from the Transvaal pharmacy. This is a part of my presentation that I want to pay specific attention to. Clinical research and clinical studies. The first study that we completed was with the Leiden University Medical Center, and it was on fibromyalgia. And the results from that study were very promising. It showed the effectiveness of the Bedrocan variety for patients that are suffering from fibromyalgia. Currently, we are in a study with the University Medical Center in Groningen on patients that have liver cancer and patients that have I don't know how to pronounce it, epidermolysis bullosa pain relief. Another study that we are involved in at this moment, is it here? Yes, it's with the Imperial College in London on the pain of children with severe epilepsy. But also, the Rambam Healthcare Campus in Israel, we do cannabis treatment in hospitalized patients using the Psyche inhaler. Psyche is a pharmaceutical company in Israel with whom we work together. They use our product in their inhaler. It's a meter dose device, so we can effectively show you how much cannabis you need per day based on your weight, based on your conditions, and a doctor can monitor it real time. And the final slide, again, on clinical research and studies. What I want to demonstrate here is the importance that we at Bedrocan see in doing clinical research and doing clinical studies. Because that's in the end where we do it all for. We do it for the patient. Every decision that we make in the company is all about making sure that the patient will not be harmed by it, will benefit from it. If the answer to a question is if the patient will benefit from it, the answer is no, we will not make that decision. That's not how the family wants it. That's not how the company wants it. That's not how the government wants it. So that's how we operate as Bedrocan. And this is just a brief overview of the clinical research and studies that we are actively involved in or still contributing to. For the full overview, I'd like to refer you to our website. I can guarantee you that there's a lot of interesting material to read there. And before I finish my presentation, I want to mention some legal challenges that we think at Bedrocan the industry is facing right now. And the first challenge is the different regulations within the European Union. Right now, you can say that due to the absence of a single legislation, it's an unequal environment that you have in the EU. Some patients have access to a quality cannabis supply chain, others don't. This is a legal challenge because in the end, how can you explain to a patient if he travels to another country or lives or moves to another country, sorry, you had your medicine in that country, you benefited from it, but now guess what? We do not have a cannabis program, so I can't help you, I'm sorry. Quality and standardization. Different regulations within the EU mean different quality standards, or the absence thereof. You can see in the various regulations of the countries that have adopted some kind of a cannabis program that there's a huge difference in the way that they see quality and standardization. And this is a legal challenge that needs to be overcome by educating doctors, by educating governments, by actually explaining to governments how this works, by showing examples of countries that have successfully adopted some kind of a cannabis program. Thirdly, a clear separation between medicinal and recreational use. What you see nowadays is that there are a lot of countries that have not made a clear separation between medicinal and recreational use. Some want to or already have fully legalized cannabis. And we fear that this might lead to a lose of focus, basically, or basically a shortage of good pharmaceutical quality cannabis, because recreational cannabis is so much easier to access because there's no quality requirements there as it is for the pharmaceutical industry. Will the patient benefit from that in the end? We don't think so. So we think that there should be a clear separation between medicinal and recreational use. We don't say that there should not be a recreational use at all, but there should be a clear separation. And finally, the approved medicine status. And this is why I wanted to highlight the importance of the clinical research that we do and that we are continuing to do. Because in the end, if you have cannabis as an approved medicine, you need more data, you need more evidence on safety and efficacy of the product. And that is what is still lacking right now. So I can only hope that everybody who's doing something with medicinal cannabis in the industry pays equal importance and equal attention to making this an approved medicine by paying attention to research. Because research in the end is the data that you need as a patient to get your prescription from your doctor. This was my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Any questions, or can we continue with the...
I have a question.
You have a question, sure.
So, in California, we have both adult use and medical, and very strict lab testing for both products. In fact, the pesticides, heavy metals, and mold requirements for adult use cannabis are more than any food product, any tobacco product, any air, water, anything. So literally the cannabis you buy in an adult use dispensary like my dispensary, Harborside, is safer to put in your body than the air you breathe in California.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some standardizations. Now, would you envision something similar to that for adult use legalization in Europe?
Definitely. I think that if adult use will be legalized at some point, you need strict quality control. And it all comes down to being sure or being aware of what's inside the product. That is what it all comes down to. So I don't say that adult use should be illegal at some point. I think that there should be a clear separation. And also for recreational use, it should be known what is inside of the plant. If you go to a coffee shop now, you go in now, I go in 5 minutes, and everybody else goes in 5 minutes after each other. I can guarantee you that we will find, even though we bought the same product, allegedly, it will have different specifications because no one knows what's inside of it. So even if we're talking about adult use, and the Netherlands is doing a pilot program with that right now, and they are trying to see if they can apply the same quality standards and the same hygiene standards as they do for the medical industry. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
And is it scalable? So for instance, oranges. If you had to test every orange that everybody in the world eats, is it possible to do? Or do you only test the ones when somebody gets sick?
I think that you need to test every batch that you've completed before you release it.
And is that scalable once 7 billion people are smoking weed every day?
I don't think that 7 billion people are going to smoke weed every day. If you look at the patients...
Maybe 2 billion.
Is it scalable? I don't know. Maybe in the future, someone will find a solution for that. Right now, for the medicinal cannabis industry, it's definitely scalable. Yes?
Okay, so I have a question, a little follow-up on that. Oh, hello. It's me again. I have great questions from Steve, right?
Angelo.
D'Angelo. And thank you for your presentation. So I was wondering about the quality control. Are there any legal hindrances to having independent labs test quality of cannabis that's been acquired by whichever means? for example, in the Netherlands, say for example you have a batch, you want to test it, you want to see, for example, to run all the tests that you do at Bedrocan. And I don't know how it is in Sweden. Either a quick kit, which you could do on your own, like a THC, maybe something like that, or a full-blown lab that could do it for you. Is that? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Someone who can like check the quality of. Maybe you know also. But anyway.
I think cooperation with California would be interesting because they have the cooperate with California. I think is important. But is there a cooperation?
It's in California. It's the opposite. So we have independent labs that are run by entrepreneurs, but we don't have any standards for them. So you could take the same cannabis to 5 different labs
Yep.
and get 5 different results.
Yep.
So we sort of have the opposite problem, where unless they're well-run labs, okay.
Good research there. Good research. You have the possibilities and we analyze them. Cooperation, I suppose. Yes.
Right. So, but how is it in the Netherlands? Is there a possibility? It feels like there's this.
We hand it over a microphone.
It feels as there maybe, I don't know how it is in Sweden, but I sort of get the feeling that in some places there could be legal hindrances to testing drugs on your own. You know what I mean? I mean, like, check if this is, because that's what they're classified as right now, at least in Sweden. Did I insult anyone? I didn't mean to.
No, you didn't insult me. I just,
I'm
I don't see the day, regulators will not like that, right? Regulators will not want you to test your own
No.
anything at home.
No.
Right.
In fact, in the Netherlands, to answer your question, every procedure, every aspect of the supply chain that I showed you is being selected via public tender every other 4 or 5 years. And the company that is doing it right now is a different company that has been doing it up until, from the top of my head, 2018. And that is because the requirements to operate a lab that can do these quality controls is so extremely difficult that there are not many labs that can do it. So that means that the labs that can do it, and in the Netherlands there are only 2 or 3 at this moment, have not only the right papers, but have one operating procedure that everybody has to follow. And that is in the cannabis monography. That is where it said how you do your stability studies, how you do your quality control, how you test for the absence of pesticides, for the absence of heavy metals, how you test the cannabinoid content.
So the coffee shops are not doing any quality control?
Not at all.
And my comment here is that I think that the Californian experience there, that there are some control and they have a scientific analysis of the impurities and the contents of the substances. So that is there a cooperation is my question. Do we cooperate enough with California?
No. We don't cooperate within California. See, unlike the coffee shops in the Netherlands, in order to sell an adult or even a patient cannabis in California, it has to go through very stringent lab testing every batch.
Yep.
And a batch can be no more than 50 pounds of flour and smaller for oils and other things. So if that batch fails the test, it must be destroyed. And it's not destroyed by the producer, it's destroyed by the producer with a regulator watching them, and it gets destroyed. We also have a seed to sale tracking system so that every gram that is sold has a batch number and can be recalled if necessary. So we do have pretty strict, like I mentioned, the lab tests for cannabis are more than food, more than air, more than water. So it's very clean once it passes the lab test. The coffee shops, for some reason, maybe you know why, are not subject to any lab testing. Is that because it's a gray area of the law?
Yeah, definitely. In the Netherlands currently,
And they
No, in the Netherlands currently, coffee shops are kind of a politically sensitive subject. Not only because of the pilot program that we have, but in fact, you're right. Nobody knows how coffee shops are being supplied. Everybody just knows that at some point there's cannabis inside the coffee shop, but nobody knows where it's from. So nobody knows what the quality of it and what the content of the cannabis that comes inside the coffee shop is. You can go to a coffee shop. And you can buy your cannabis there, and you can use it, and you will not be criminalized because it's called a gedoogbeleid. It means a toleration policy, meaning you can use it. You will not be criminalized only if you have a small amount of cannabis with you. If you have larger amounts, you'll be suspected of being a dealer. And that is currently how it is in the Netherlands, and that's what they want to change. That's why they enacted the pilot program. Does this answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
But also, I stress this cooperation issue because in California there is a quality control, and there we can have they analyze different components that are known to be interacting with the nervous system and the body. And that we could win much from this, I think, to cooperate with California as well, of course, and whoever we wish to cooperate with it.
Well, good luck. I will help as much as I can. I think we are ready for our next speaker. Is that right? Okay. So, do we have Valken Medical? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert.